Welcome to The Authentic Me. The power of storytelling is what I believe. Every story is unique. Every story may hold the answers you seek. With special guests fortnightly so you can learn, apply their wisdom for your own life's turn. I am your host. My name is Mel Yu. Together, we might discover a new worldview.
So, writing this podcast intro for Dean Blankfield was fun. Who is Dean Blankfield? Until a week ago, I basically had no idea. Can't believe I have gone 30 years of my life without his insights and wisdom. But through a friend's podcast, shout out to the James Harrison Show, I dived deep into the world of Dean and reached out to him via Instagram and ended up chatting to him that day for over an hour, which could have easily been a podcast episode in itself. I just knew I had to share this guy's mindset and philosophies with you all. Simply put, this guy is a life coach and life mentor specializing in his ability to dissolve emotional blockages and unlearn the unhealthy behaviors we have learned from childhood and taken into our adulthood lives. Dean's life is so colorful yet minimalistic, currently living in Bondi Beach, but originally from Perth and also having lived in Melbourne. Dean fell into the self-help and personal development space after a traumatic experience with public speaking and freezing in front of a crowd of thousands. After getting sucked into the self-development space, reading hundreds of books and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in the seminar and networking event space, Dean realized that his constant thirst for knowledge and needing to know more was suddenly doing more harm than good. Now, Dean lives in a constant state of questioning everything and has settled into the world of the unknown. He finds comfort in the discomfort and is a dead-set legend and free-spirited soul. I don't often find these rare gems that I instantly get hooked on, but Dean's energy and ability to understand human behavior and psychology is absolutely mind-boggling. So today, I count my lucky stars and am keen to share his thoughts and outlook on life. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the clarity architect, Dean Blankfield.
Mel, thank you. What are you talking about there?
I'm talking about your lovely mug.
Do you write LinkedIn profiles? Because I think you should write mine.
I think so. Well, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because with you, and we said this in our first original call, there is not that much that I can Google off you. There's not really that much information out there. You're quite mysterious. And even your Instagram, you've only really just started building that community. You've kind of been a bit of a mystery man.
For many years, I lived in the shadows, and now was the time, thanks to COVID, to awaken the giant within and step out into the dark, out of the darkness into the light, and just share a message with the world. But I really appreciate you reaching out and even listening to the last podcast, and thank you for an amazing introduction. Hopefully I can live up to your expectations just a little bit.
I love it. I love it. So let's kick off. The first thing is talk to me. I want to know how you even got to where you are now. So, let's dive into how you even got into the self-development space. So I did touch on it in the intro, but for my audience and the listeners out there, how did you actually start going, okay, I need to do this type of work?
Well, I didn't. That was the funny part. I kind of just fell into it, which is pretty interesting. So in your introduction, you said that, I did public speaking once and I kind of froze in front of thousands of people. I'll just correct that and say there was about 12 people in the room.
Oh, okay.
So in front of thousands, it was actually only in front of a small crowd. And that was the catalyst for my metamorphosis. The caterpillar died in that moment and I had to become a butterfly. And I know it's very metaphorical, but essentially in that moment, there was so much heat in my system when I was standing in front of this crowd and nothing came out. And that moment sent me on a trajectory of kind of looking for answers. What is going on here? I was 23, 24 years old, approximately around that age. And I'd never experienced anything like that before. So that was in Melbourne and I went back to Perth. I was living there at the time. And one of my friends said, go see the psychologist. And I was like, I've never seen a psychologist before. Why would I need to see a psychologist? He said, just go talk to this guy. And I went into the room and the guy said, what's going on? What happened? I explained what happened and he said, you have clinical anxiety disorder. And I was like, that doesn't sound right. Don't put me in a box. I don't want to live up to your expectations. And I had the awareness and know-how in that moment to realize that, no, I don't accept that. So I left there and I was still searching for answers. And coincidentally, or not coincidentally, one of my friends said, meet this guy, he's a business mentor. And I met this guy and it was still with business, but he said to me, you know, what's going on? And I explained the whole situation. I said, you know, this guy, this psychologist told me that I had a, you know, clinical anxiety. And this business mentor said to me, he goes, you know what? You don't have anxiety, you do anxiety. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I've never heard that before. Where did that come from? And so that kind of was my introduction to neuro-linguistic programming and the self-development industry. And what I loved about it is they had a very different perspective on issues and, you know, what was really going on inside. And I got sucked into the vortex of doing more, wanting to know more, having more, being more. It's like, it's this spiral that you get sucked into. So that moment sent me on this trajectory of kind of learning who I was and what was going on and why did this happen. Yeah, that was kind of the start of my journey.
That's crazy how one moment that, you know, public speaking might not affect everyone in the same way, but for you, it was quite a traumatic experience that pivoted the course of your life.
For sure. It was, in hindsight now, looking back at it, I'm extremely thankful. You know, sometimes tears of gratitude stream down my face because I'd be in this position talking to you, helping people, being in the coaching industry and whatnot, if it wasn't for that moment. So for many, many years, I attached guilt and shame around that event. You know, I wasn't good enough. Why did it happen to me? You know, that's just not acceptable. I expect a very high standard for myself. And it took years to dissolve that guilt and shame until it got to the moment where I can look back with gratitude and say, thank goodness that happened. And I'm looking forward, kind of, to the next event that happens in my life that sends me on a different trajectory.
Yeah, I love that. I love that perspective, and hindsight's 2020. So I love that you've seen that growth. You have this ability to, I think, break down these complicated words or meaning. I find that you can explain things in such layman terms, or just for an everyday person that might never have been in this space. Can you tell me a little bit, and because you are a coach in this space, can you tell me a little bit about what emotional blockages mean, or like why do humans have emotional blockages?
Well, that is an extremely big term to explain and understand, but Tony Robbins says it best. He says, complexity is the enemy of execution. So the more complicated we make something, the less chance there is for us to actually push through and execute on whatever it is that needs to be done. But emotional blockages only came later on in my life. So it's only in the past 3 years that I truly started getting a grasp of what was going on. So when I fell into the self-development industry, there's a lot of distraction there, a lot of change of state, change the meaning, change your focus, change your physiology, go for a run, read a book. And what happened is that I became a certain sort of person that showed up in a certain way, this confident, refined, someone who can, no matter what came up, I just executed and ran through the brick wall. But over time, it wasn't until 3 years ago where I realized, hold on a sec, is that really who I am? Because even though I built this persona to protect the pain and from me experiencing that pain again, it also kept out all the good times and it blocked out who I was as a person. Because that wasn't my true essence to show up like this. I'm a softie at heart as well. And I wasn't showing that side of me. So then I realized that a lot of the stuff in the personal development industry wasn't working for me. And there was something else. Something was missing. And in that moment, I was introduced to a new mentor. And as they say, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And this guy appeared. And he basically made me tap into the more feminine side of myself, my creativity, my feeling, my emotion. And it was in that moment where I realized that this refined, confident person who didn't feel any pain, who didn't express emotion, who could change his physiology and get out of any traumatic experience was the weakest I've ever been in my life. I used to think it was strength, but it was just masking all the suffering. And so that was another pivotal moment in my life where I had to start getting in touch with my emotions and realizing that there's a lot of blockages everywhere. And essentially I had emotional constipation because I didn't know how to express myself. I didn't know how to
Yeah,
feel.
right.
Blocked myself off from all of this sort of stuff.
And because that's really important and interesting to note that in James's podcast, you had said a mate passed away and your immediate reaction was to go jump on a trampoline. And when I heard that, I was like, whoa, because you were so conscious of changing your state and to not feel the sadness, then you just change your physiological, state. And that's huge because then and a lot of men do this. A lot of men block out those potentially vulnerable feelings, raw feelings, sadness or crying. It's why men still find it quite hard to cry. What do you say to the men that really still do struggle with opening up? I find women where we connect, we're like, oh my God, yes, feels. But men.
You're exactly right. However, a lot of my clients, the majority of my clients are women, and they struggle to express themselves clearly. So they get a whole range of emotions flooding themselves at one given time, and they're sitting there and they're confused a lot of the time. And I know this is a blanket statement. So for the women as well, it's very helpful to get clarity and clear on exactly what you're feeling in that moment. And I know that you can feel multiple things, but that really helps you identify what's going on and how you can move through. So with the men, it's quite simple, but it's not easy because you are fighting against every single thing that's happened in your life. In every cell of your body, it is ingrained in you. And from your lineage passed down from your great-grandfather to your grandfather to your father to yourself, that men don't show emotion. That strength is in confidence. That strength is in physique. And so you've got your whole being pulled one way. So you need to build the courage. And here, the thing on leadership. So leadership is having the courage to disappoint people's expectations of you.
Wow.
And so with men, there's so many expectations on them from society, from the culture, from their family, from their father, that's been passed down through generations. So you need to have the courage to say, you know what? This doesn't work for me anymore. And my true essence is feeling. My true essence is to express emotion. And you start playing with it. You dip your toe in the water and you say, and you have an intention, maybe this day or today or tomorrow or this week, I'm going to tell someone how I feel. Short one. And you start practicing it and see how you feel. And that's literally every single guy that comes to me. It doesn't matter if they want to grow their business, if they want a relationship, they all got the same problem. They don't know how to express themselves emotionally. It's the most ironic thing.
Do you think that once we understand how to express our emotions, then that would actually catapult what our business goals are or professional goals or anything like that? There is still quite a divide. Like people be like, oh, well, that's my professional side and this is like what I'm like personally. Whereas I kind of challenge that and go, isn't it all kind of interrelated? What is your opinion on that?
Everything is interrelated. And I was a liar. We're all liars. Because I believed the lies that I was fed growing up from the family systems, from the cultural systems, from the social systems, from the educational systems, that I have to be a certain way. I was lied to and I don't blame them. We all were. But it takes hyper awareness to understand this. And when I realized in business that this front that I put on, this masculine, powerful, visionary that will move through anything.
Wolf of Wall Street, like pump your chest.
When I realized that wasn't serving me anymore, I started playing with the feminine, and every interaction, whether it was with employees, with business partners, joint ventures, whatever it may be, I would go in there and I would express emotion. And I'd create a safe space for us to talk vulnerably about things. And guess what? The business skyrocketed. The relationship skyrocketed. Everything benefited from me tapping into my true essence, which is a more softer sort of thing. And the strategic part, the masculine part, can come at the end.
I love that. This is so good. So moving on to healthy relationships, right? Relationships form everything in our meaning to life.
Yeah.
What do you think is essential to creating healthy relationships? Potentially partnerships, intimacy in that sense, but also just friendships or relationship with yourself. What are the key essentials?
Well, again, it's being honest. It's being honest with yourself, because like, I'm just going off my experience and exactly what we were talking about before, but I would show up with different masks on in different events, and that's tiring. It's tiring to show up at a business one way because I'm supposed to be seen as this masculine guy. It's tired to show up with my family in a different way. It's tired to show up in intimate relationships. And then all of a sudden, you're using all this energy to try and be a certain way. It's tiring, it drains your energy, and it's inauthentic. So in relationships, the first thing for me is having awareness about what is the truth, who you really are. How can you communicate that to yourself and to others? And it doesn't mean going on a first date and exposing everything about yourself. There's layers to this stuff. You can expose a little bit. And then once you start feeling the trust is reciprocated, then you can expose a little bit and a little bit. So rule number one is honesty. You've got to be honest with yourself, and you've got to be honest with them. When you try and portray this certain person on a date or in a relationship, you will get found out eventually, because it's tiring showing up with someone who you're not. It's tiring. And then the second part is communication. We communicate generally in our language, but in order to influence and to understand someone else, you need to communicate in their influence. And I don't know if you've heard of the 5 love languages, have you?
Yeah.
You know, so that's just a time.
For people that are listening, what are the 5 love languages again? I think refresh my mind. Do you know? I know.
So basically the 5 love languages is, there are 5 different languages that you talk in, that your love speaks in. And when you understand yours and when you understand your partner's, then you can speak to them in their language. So I'll give you, so a few of them are quality time, gifts, physical touch, and I forget the other 2.
Yeah.
But I'll give you a quick little example on that. 2 of my best friends, basically family, they are in a relationship and have been in a relationship for a long time. But the male, the guy, he used to work 12 to 15 hour days, and he used to come home and he used to do the dishes and he used to clean the house, and then he used to go to bed at night, right? But his girlfriend, she used to get angry at this all the time, and they used to start fighting, and there was a lot of friction and a lot of resistance, until they sat down and had a chat about it and said, what is going on here? And he said, I do everything. I go to work for you. I provide for the family. I provide for the kids. And then I come home tired, and then I clean the dishes and I clean the house, and I go above and beyond to make you happy. And she said, that doesn't make me happy. You acknowledging me and saying that you love me and that I look beautiful, that makes me happy. And in that moment, they had a realization, and their relationship transformed forever, because he realized that her love language was words of affirmation. So at work, he would remind himself that she looks beautiful, and he'd send her a message. Or he'd come home and say, thank you so much for being an amazing woman and keeping the house intact. So when he understood that, their relationship transformed. It's very, very important communication.
And yeah, exactly. Communication is absolutely key. And the way that you give love might not be the way that you receive love as well. So I think that book, yeah, it's a short read. So I think, yeah, everyone should definitely get along, and even just a quick Google search of the 5 love languages. It will really help identify what your needs are, but also what your partner's or friends' needs are.
100%. So going back to your question, honesty, being honest with yourself and, you know, who you are and how can you project that to the other person, then communication is key in every relationship. You need to understand to communicate. But the third part, which is probably the most important, is looking within you and seeing what's going on, because relationships are just a mirror. You are reflecting a certain person into your life, whether it's a first date, a 10th date, 5-year relationship. You are both there to teach each other a very, very important lesson. Relationships, especially intimate ones, are the one things in life that reveal a lot of stuff about ourselves that we may not have been conscious to.
And what about attachment theory? Is something that I know that you've either been studying or have studied a little bit about. What can you explain a little bit about attachment theory in your understanding, and also how that plays out in our adult relationships?
Yeah, so attachment theory was something that I got into by default because I realized that when I was dating, I was running certain patterns and I was unaware of what was going on. So the strategic part of me, the self-development part, the masculine part was like, all right, if I'm attracting the wrong partner, like a wrong sort of woman or someone that doesn't resonate with my values or what I want, strategically, how can I place myself around women who I would like? Whether it's in yoga because they're healthy or you know, they're healthy, they share similar values, they love growth, self-development, they're aligned, right? But I realized quickly that that doesn't work, because even if I attracted and brought in someone who I perceived that I really wanted to be around, they would go just as quickly. And that's why I got introduced to attachment theory. And attachment theory is basically when we are infants and when we are children, we adopt and pick up certain blueprints on how we react and how we communicate in relationships. So essentially it's based on the caregiver and the infant. But so I'll give you an example. If you're 2 years old and your mother is there and you reach out for attention, you reach out your hand for love and attention and you get rejected. Well, you start thinking, well, what's going on here? If you do it again and you reach out for love and attention and you get rejected, then all of a sudden the blueprint that you adopt is love is unsafe. So I need to protect myself and avoid intimacy, because if I put myself out there, I'm going to get rejected and it's extremely painful. So as a baby, you're extremely smart and you adopt this blueprint of avoidance, where you take a step back and you don't allow yourself to get too attached to the caregiver, because the caregiver brings along a lot of pain and suffering for you. Now that may work as a 2-year-old Mel, but as a 30-year-old Mel, that's going to bring some serious suffering into your life, because relationships are about intimacy and people can't work out why they can't get close in an intimate relationship. They don't know that deep down in their core, they want to be in a close, intimate relationship, but they always standoffish. They don't know why they can't get too close. And that's their attachment style. So there's 4 attachment styles. There's the avoidant, which we just spoke about, the anxious attachment, where you just want to get closer and closer and closer. And
So almost needy, that needy sort of mentality. Yeah.
Very needy. Then there is the secure attachment style. And the last one is the avoidant and anxious together. So you can be both.
Wow.
So the attachment style is pivotal because there is no good and bad, but some attachment styles can be harder to be in relationships than others. And when you understand what you are, it's a lot easier for you to navigate through intimate relationships. And you can actually change the neuroplasticity in your brain, and you can change your attachment style by doing the deep work.
Yeah, I love that. And that's the first time I ever actually started looking into attachment theory and attachment styles, when I went to my psychologist and we did all this work on my inner child, because I had showed up as a 29-year-old, but then I was writing letters to my 5-year-old self. I had to do a lot of work on this inner child. And it kind of brings me to the next question. And we all have pain and suffering. It's inevitable in life, Buddha says. And how can we develop better coping mechanisms to our pain or to people that have hurt us?
Okay, so big questions. But firstly, can anyone really hurt you? Because pain is subjective, right? No?
Yes, deep. You're going one level deeper than I am.
Because you look confused there for a second. But
no,
pain
but
is,
yeah.
You put 10 people in the same situation. 6 of them go through a painful experience. 2 of them suffer and 2 of them flourish. So there's a lot of strategies and techniques that you can use, like around pain and suffering. But what I've realized from my experience, that there is no substitute for the deep work, and it's painful and scary, right? If we're getting hurt on some sort of level, it may not be our fault, but it's our responsibility to do something about it. And this comes from exactly what we're talking about, the deep work and having a hyper awareness about what's going on. It's about processing that pain and that suffering integrating it within your body through the means of emotional expression and having amazing people around you who can support you and build that amazing network. And then what's going on here? Because it's a very vague concept, pain and suffering. If you give me something more specific,
Yeah. No, I get it. And they are big concept sort of words. Like, how can we, this question will be for a lot of the young listeners that I have, like, how can we trust again when we've been hurt then? A lot of people don't want to step into a new relationship or a new anything. And I get it a lot because they've been so burnt by their past relationship.
100%. And again, burnt. So did you burn yourself or did the other person burn yourself? Because when you blame the other person, you lose all power. You can't do anything about it. You're the victim. And you will always suffer and create pain in your life because you think that you can't do anything about it because it's the other person that hurt you. But the moment you realized on some level, it's not your fault if they hurt you physically or whatever it may be, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility to do something about it. And responsibility is your ability to respond. So I went on for many, many years, this person hurt me, this girl hurt me, it's her fault, and I was broken until the moment I realized that that doesn't serve me. And in order for me to progress in life and find someone amazing, I have to realize that on some level, on many levels, it was my fault. Because why did I choose a partner like that? Why did I attract a partner like that? Why did I stay in that relationship? Why did I get so hurt at the end? What is going on? And when you start asking more powerful questions, you'll get more powerful answers. So what I realized, especially in relationships, is that the first major relationship that we have, generally speaking, when we're an adult, we don't feel whole and we don't feel confident. So we have a lot of insecurities that we're unaware of from attachment styles, from expectations, from cultures and societies and whatnot. So we have a lot of insecurities and we find someone who completes us. The exact opposite. Opposites attract. You've heard it many times. But over time, you start to grow and evolve and that relationship doesn't work anymore. And it ends and it is painful. And there's a lot of stuff. But half the people say, hold on a sec, I need to get back on the horse. I need to pick myself back up again. So they go on the journey of self-realization and self-discovery. And they build themselves up. And they go inside and they remove all the resistance. And they dissolve all these emotional triggers. They change their attachment style. And guess what? They don't need anyone anymore. They're independent. Everything that they were seeking for in a partner, they feel for themselves in that moment. And as a consequence, they don't attract the toxic partner anymore. An amazing relationship is about having everything you want out of a relationship in yourself. That is the precursor for an amazing relationship. And so all of a sudden, they don't look for someone to complete them. They look for someone to complement them. They want someone who shares the same values, who shares the same ideologies, who shares the same beliefs, and they have an amazing relationship. But then the other half of people say, they did this, they did that, and guess what? They attract the next toxic relationship and the next toxic relationship because the universe is saying, you didn't listen the first time, here it is again, and here it is again. You're not learning the lesson. It's time to awaken. Wake up.
It's so good. Like I've just nodded my entire way through that response because I know how many people really need that cutthroat advice there and actually take responsibility and accountability. I had just come out of a relationship and I was saying to my friends for a little bit, they're like, you know, I'm 30 and I've got all this baggage. Like, how do I show up in my next relationship with all this baggage? And now, like listening to you, it's just like, that's just not the healthy way to be processing any of that. It's not even baggage. It's just part of my journey.
Exactly. So firstly, you can put the bag down.
Yes. Giving yourself permission to like.
We use all these metaphors that we actually buy into. And, you know, when people talk, the language that they use tells a lot about what's going on inside. And I can just feel the weight from here of carrying around this baggage, right? But who says it's baggage? Who says it's baggage? And also the subtext of what you said before is that you're 30 now. Now, when you say that, all I can my first gut instinct reaction is like, well, you judge yourself around that. There's a lot of judgment. There's a belief that something should happen when you're 30 years old. And so my question is, where did you adopt that belief from? Where did that come from? Because it's not yours. Because there's no difference between 30 and 29. Time is an illusion. But you have adopted this thing just the way that you said it, that, oh, I'm 30 now. I'm like, well, is that cultural? Is that from your parents? Where the expectations coming from? The judgment and the pressure you're putting on yourself for being 30 is causing major resistance inside of you. And it's an illusion.
It's so good. The first time that we talked and I had mentioned, I was like, I'm 30, and you're like, congrats. And I'm like, oh, I just broke up with you, just got out of a relationship. You're like, congrats. And I'm like, what? Who is this guy? And you just kept kind of having that positive reinforcement or positive mindset, or a positive perspective, or even you challenged me a lot in that. Is that teachable? That positivity or that ability to keep perspective all the time? It was almost automatic for you, right? You just shifted me automatically.
Yeah, because firstly, I'm not an advocate for toxic positivity. I'm more of a realist than someone who's like positive. Because
Yes.
Exactly. What's really going on in you feeling 30, I would navigate and ask yourself the question, what's the feeling? What is the feeling inside? Because it's not about masking it and saying, oh, it's amazing. It's cool to jolt you out of your hypnosis because you've been sedated into believing that there's something wrong with being 30, right? So when I say congratulations, I jolted you out of that trance and you're like, well, hold on a sec, what's going on here? And then in that moment, you had to reassess. So I definitely think perspective is a lot, right? And as Carl Jung says, that if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it'll direct your life and you'll call it fate. So you are running unconscious patterns around the number 30, which is ridiculous. And so to answer your question, I went around in circles. To have people around you who can see things that you're blinded to because you can't read the label if you're stuck inside the jar. You don't know that you were running these patterns of being 30 and putting so much pressure on yourself, which is ridiculous because 30 is nothing. What is it?
Yeah.
The way, the time around the sun, it's actually meaningless. To have people around you that won't lie to you and that will hold you to a higher standard than you hold yourself is invaluable. And I have for 10 years, I've had at least 2 to 3 mentors around me at all times. And I pick them based on their ability to call me out for all the bullshit that I talk and all the bullshit patterns that I run. And I know I'm giving you a bit of a hard time here, but I just really wanted to solidify the point.
No, I love it.
30.
Yeah, no, I love it. And that's why I know it just resonates with me so much, everything that you are saying. And you touched on it a little bit earlier, the importance of language. How important is it that we talk to ourselves with kindness and compassion and others as well? Like what I just said, it's the words that we use. How important is being conscious of the words that we use?
Well, being a conscious person is being aware. It's being aware that every single action you take, every single word you say, every single experience you enter, every single belief you have, it makes a difference. You are taking these unconscious patterns and behaviors and making them conscious. And know that every interaction that I have with someone in the coffee shop or at Woolworths or with you, it matters. And there will be an impact on my life and on your life. So that's the epitome of being a conscious person. And language is the keys to the soul. I know everything about you just by the way that you talk. And it starts with your internal dialogue. So just the way that you said 30, I knew already that you're putting so much pressure on yourself, which is unnecessary. And so be very careful about how you talk to yourself and how you talk to others, because it will reveal everything about yourself. Mm-hmm. Language is one of the most important things ever. And when a new client comes to me or I meet someone, just the way that they talk, it's just crazy. So Australia's got this thing that every time you ask someone, how are you? They go, not bad. Now, not is a negative word, bad is a negative word, and you combine them together, and unconsciously all day they're saying, I'm not bad, not bad, not bad. Don't worry. So when I go to a checkout and someone says, I go, hey, how's your shift today? And they go, it's not bad. I go, well, if you're not bad, are you good, great, or outstanding? And they're like, what, who is this freak? But again, it's hypnosis. We've hypnotized ourselves by using language. So when you're very, very aware of the language that you use and how you communicate, you'll start seeing patterns that reveal parts of yourself that you may want to change, or change your perspective on them anyway.
That's insane. Like, especially I can imagine that person at the shop, like, at the shopping center or something, and they're just doing their like automatic thing, and their response is not bad, and then you come along and awaken their consciousness, and now they're kind of, for at least even just a window of time, you got to go, well, am I good, great, or outstanding?
Exactly. And you snap out of the trance state, because all we do, we move from one trance to another, from one hypnotic state to another. To be hypnotized, it's like you get in your car, you go from point A to point B, and all of a sudden you're like, how the hell did I get here? You're in a trance. You're on autopilot the whole time. So to be conscious is to awaken yourself from all these patterns and limitations and language running in the background. Because when you're aware of it, you realize that most of it isn't even yours. It doesn't serve you. You've picked it up as a protection mechanism when you're a baby. And it's time to build the courage to unravel all the shit that you're not and become the miracle that you were born as. Because when you're a baby, you're a miracle. When you're 30, you're a problem.
Well, how do we go on? Sorry. Well, no, like, well, how do we minimize or eliminate self-doubt? Do we all have it? Do we all have self-doubt? Is it eliminating it, or do we minimize it? What's your thoughts?
Well, I don't have an amazing answer to that question. However, the first thing that arises within me is that as babies, we're joyful. We have this deep curiosity about the world. We're playful. We're not so serious. We want to be astronauts. We want to be ballerinas. We want to be firemen. We want to start businesses. And all of a sudden, our parents, due to their lack of awareness, and they're just doing the best that they can do in that moment, they say to us, no, be reasonable. Be reasonable. Don't be silly. Become a lawyer. Become a doctor. Do something that makes money. Then you go to school, and your curiosity and your awe is oozing out of you. And you want to do amazing things and change the world. And you want to be a painter. You want to be an artist. You want to run the 100 meters. And they go, no. Don't be silly. Be reasonable. Be reasonable. And then all of a sudden you wonder why we have self-doubt, because our whole life children have no problem. Babies have no problem expressing themselves. They express all emotions with non-judgment. Non-judgment. It's when the parents or the caregivers or the system uses language and starts putting limitations on them. No. Don't say that. No. Don't go over there. Oh, you crying? Look at the keys. Look at the keys. Look at the keys. And they don't understand. The parents, the caregivers, the systems, they don't get it. They're doing the best in their ability in that moment. But what they're doing is suppressing the inner nature and the inner joy of the baby. And you wonder why a 34-year-old male can't express themselves. You wonder why they're lost and they can't find their purpose. They feel like an imposter. They have self-doubt, low self-esteem, because you're fighting against everything. The cards are stacked against you. But it's time to awaken, to be a leader. You've got to do it for your friends. You've got to do it for your family. You've got to do it for your country. You've got to do it for your clients. And most importantly, you've got to do it for yourself. It's time to awaken and say no more. You were lied to. It's not their fault. But it's time for you to do the deep work and say, you know what? It's not going to be easy. But at the end of it, I'm going to reap the rewards.
It's so good. Wow. No, it's so good. So do you have then routine or rituals that you do to maintain a life of wellness?
No. And people ask me all the time, do you meditate? No. Do you do yoga? No. Do you do this? No. It's because what are we looking for when we do these things like meditation, right? There's no word in the English language for meditation. It doesn't mean anything. meditation is a state, to be in a meditative state. You do meditation to be in that state of equanimity, poise, and balance, that you have full control of your internal dialogue and how you feel inside. When there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. That's why you meditate, right? So that your thoughts don't control you, you control your thoughts. Now, what I found in my life anyway, which there's nothing, I think meditation is amazing.
Yeah,
And
all the meditators listening and the yoga practices.
But for me to get in that meditative state, which I'm in most of the time, it's when I feel a certain way or when resistance arises, I challenge it. I allow myself to process it. I challenge it to see what's going on, and I make myself uncomfortable. I talk to my mentors about it, and I process what's going on. And as a byproduct, I start feeling more energetic. I feel more poised, more balanced, more confident. So that's kind of my routine, which happens all the time. Even before this podcast, I started feeling nervous. And normally, 5 years ago, I would have been, okay, nervous, you can't do that. You need to come across as confident. You know, you're representing yourself here. Put your best foot forward. So you can't be nervous. Cold shower, green juice, go for a run, put some music on, change your state. And even in that moment when I was feeling nervous before, I thought to myself, my whole body was like, go for a run, change your state. But then I had the awareness in that moment that, hold on a sec, this is what has been going on for the whole time, for many, many years, and it hasn't worked for you. So in this moment, I have a decision to make. When you are aware, you have choice. And I chose to say, you know what, I'm nervous, and that's okay. It's fair enough to be nervous. What's wrong with that? And in that moment, that feeling dissolved a little bit, and I came in here much more confident. Instead of repressing and suppressing the emotion and not allowing myself to feel nervous, because I got judgment around why nervous is not good.
And you've said this before as well, and I say this for other people, that sense of nervousness releases the same physiological symptoms as excitement. So before I get up on stage as well, like I do get nervous, but I kind of just change the meaning that's tied into that butterflies in my stomach and be like, I get another opportunity to share. So I'm really excited. Don't know if it's actually real or true, but like at that point, I believe in it, and it helps me take a moment before I go up and sort of settle in that sense, because I changed the meaning from nervousness to excitement.
Yeah, and it's real for you. So it works. And also, I would suggest that tell yourself, like, what's wrong with being nervous? In fact, if you went out on stage and said, I am nervous, do you know what's going to happen? In that moment of raw vulnerability, all the women would want to be you and all the men would want to be with you, because you have the courage to say, you know what? This is my insecurity and I'm okay with it. Because the moment you're okay with being vulnerable, vulnerability doesn't exist. It's pure courage.
Brene Brown over here. But 100%. And I think when I'm at my most vulnerable and I share, like yesterday when I shared my IGTV, it just got so well received and reciprocated, I think, because it was a very human moment for me, that I looked at it and I was judging myself, going, oh, I could have looked prettier, or like I was in really casual clothes. I'm like, why didn't I put on like a dressier top? But it was a very in the moment thing that I decided to upload it. But in that vulnerability, I think that people that were watching and listening made that more relatable.
For sure. Human beings connect through the struggles, not through the strengths.
Yeah, right. Is that always the case?
Not always the case, but the majority of time, people are not going to connect with you because you're wearing an amazing dress. They're going to connect with you because they feel what you feel. They're going through what you're going through, and you have the courage and the strength to say it and express it. Everything that they wanted to say, you are saying. And in that moment, they feel this deep connection with you because you understand what they're going through. Because as you said before, everyone's going through tough times on some level.
Yeah, I love it. There is another question that I kind of wanted to ask, in how do we lean into the discomfort more? You mentioned resistance, because the automatic response when we have resistance is to avoid or detach or distract. So for people listening, then how can we actually try and be okay with that discomfort?
Firstly, it's not easy. It's not going to be easy because it's uncomfortable and you've been avoiding it your whole life. Secondly, to have amazing people, like there is no substitute for an amazing mentor. Someone who doesn't advise you, but sits in the passenger seat and makes sure that you're okay when you drive in the car and says, hey, there's a pothole over there, or there's a pothole over there. Just be careful, be careful. And be kind to yourself. There's no substitute for that. Because when you read a book or you go to a seminar, you're reading it from your level of awareness. It's coming through your lenses, but it takes someone else to point out, mate, something serious is going on here. And what was your question again? I lost my train of thought.
How do we lean into discomfort?
Discomfort. And they make it as if it's okay to lean into it. So firstly, it comes from awareness. You need to be aware enough that in the moment when I was nervous before, I was aware that, hold on a sec, this is uncomfortable. My instant gut reaction was I want to run away. But in that moment, because I was aware of what was going on, I had the ability to say, no, you're not running anywhere. Let's just sit in it for a bit and say, because I realize in my own experience that when I say I am nervous, the nerves start dwindling. Or when I say that I am sad, then the sadness starts going down a little bit, starts dissolving. And so when you have the awareness, then you have the ability to make a choice, right? And then you have to realize that it's going to be uncomfortable. But here's the thing. The way that you've always done things, by always avoiding this discomfort and the darkness, is bringing around pain and suffering. So if you lean into the discomfort, there's going to be pain and suffering. Either way, there's going to be pain and suffering. You may as well choose the path that's got the goal at the end of the light, the goal at the end of the tunnel. The one that's going to help you evolve as a person and transcend these limitations that are holding you back. And it's scary. I know it's scary, but you can do it.
It's so true. It's so true, because the time is going to pass anyway. Whether, you choose to stay in the comfortable, in the here and now, in the longevity of it, you're suffering. You're suffering even longer.
Yeah, comfort is death. Security is death. Human beings, when we're born from a place of infinite possibility. We're boundless. Imagine if I told you that your potential, you hit the ceiling of your potential when you make 100 grand a year. You would laugh at me. Why? Because as human beings, our nature is infinite possibilities. Our potential is infinite. We are boundless. So all these little linguistic confines and these mental shackles that we have on ourselves, we live in the prison of our own mind, and we know that we don't want to be in there. So it's going to cause suffering. And the moment you can metaphorically lean into the darkness and slay the dragon, you'll get the pot of gold. You will grow, you will break down all these shackles and these conditioning and the hypnosis that you've been fed your whole entire life. And you will allow yourself to live a life, a full life, where you can feel a full spectrum of emotions, do and have whatever you please. But in order to do that, we have to collapse these limitations that we've adopted and that we've adopted throughout our childhood, through the generational trauma that gets passed to us. And when you, as a byproduct, you're just going to live more joyfully. Life's going to be amazing. Why? Because you're not limited by all these bullshit constraints that we adapt mainly through language.
Yeah. And I didn't get a chance to ask you this a little bit earlier, but did your family values and your family upbringing, do you think, played a part in who you are today? Or is it the mentors that you obtained in your adulthood life? Because a lot of people will be like, your childhood shapes you and it shapes who you are in your upbringing. But which one do you think would have played more, if there was more of a part, the mentors that you have now in your world, or that family upbringing, your brother or your siblings or anything like that?
It depends, because there's that funny story. It's a cool story about this guy who's, I think he's 85 or whatnot, and he's on his deathbed in the hospital. And he was an alcoholic, he was a gambler, he was in and out of jail his whole life. And his two sons came to say goodbye to him. So the sons came in and they said goodbye to the father, and then they were walking out, and the nurse stopped the sons, and she said to the sons, I didn't understand. One of you's in a suit. What do you do? And he goes, I'm a doctor. And she goes, but how can you be a doctor? And he goes, well, with a father like that, how could I not? And then the other guy's in and out, the other brother's in and out of jail and a gambler. And she goes, but you're an addict. You're in and out of jail. How did that happen? He goes, well, with a father like that, how can I not? And the same story applies everywhere. So again, are you a victim or are you the victor?
Yes.
Let me tell you something. I went to a private school, and some of my best friends and best childhood friends, they got everything. Everything. They got given all the materialistic possessions in the world, go to any schools they want. They didn't even know what the meaning of suffering is. And let me tell you something, that some of them are the most messed up characters you'll ever meet in your whole entire life. It's through the troubled times that you build resilience, grit, determination. Go look at Oprah. You know Oprah's story?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of my favorites.
Raped, miscarriages, being a black girl in the time of oppression. Look at her. What's her excuse?
Well, everyone constantly told her no when she was reporting, and like I'm sure, I don't know if you know the story, but when she was a reporter, they were like, you're way too emotional, you're way too attached to these stories, and her emotions and her vulnerability was seen as a weakness. And then she went and opened up a daytime TV show that was all about just feelings, and now look at, she's got the Oprah Winfrey show. Yeah, it is crazy that someone that had that upbringing, and you're right, I answered my own question in a way that I guess I didn't know.
And that's a beautiful thing, because all of a sudden it brings about awareness. All transformation happens from awareness, because if you're unaware of what's going on, you can't change it. If you don't know why you are in toxic relationships, or if you don't know why you can't get a job, or you can't make millions of dollars, or not in the position that you want to be, and you don't investigate what is going on, you'll never be able to change it. It's just going to be this perpetual cycle that you get sucked into. And especially in relationships, everyone's got these stories that they believe, all the good men are taken. Women don't like
the language, yeah? The language that you use, like what you just said, all men or like women, it's such broad generalized terms. Again, the language we use.
Yeah, of course, but it also 100% language, and it also reinforces certain beliefs that we have about ourselves. So if I think that if I'm scared of intimacy and I say that all women are needy, well, what happens is that I will go unconsciously only date women who are needy to reinforce my belief that women are needy, which, guess what? I don't need to be in a close, intimate relationship anymore, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
And this is when hyper-awareness comes into play, because if you don't understand what you're doing, if you don't understand that you've attached love to fear, because as an infant, your parents or your caregivers were sometimes there, sometimes not, sometimes there, sometimes not, and you don't know what's going on, well, it's just going to continue to play out until you have the courage and energy levels to face it head on and say, what the hell is going on here? Enough is enough. Enough is enough.
So good. This has been like such an awakening episode for me. I'm learning so much. So I know my listeners right now, like it's so deep, and you're opening up so much, but in a positive way. To sort of like come to the end of this segment, you mentioned that you did used to read, right? A lot. And now not so much? Or do you still read?
Not really. I'm very specific with who I get my information from, what I listen to, what podcasts I listen to, what podcasts I go on. And because I realized that it's not knowledge that determines the quality of a life. I spent 10 years learning everything I could know about everything and realized I was still miserable. Yeah. So for me, the journey now and has been in the unlearning and uncovering my true nature and what's really going on here. Because here's the thing, 98% of the shit that people teach, they're just teaching stuff that hasn't worked for them in their life. Think about a child, right? When a child is born, everyone, the true spiritual gurus and the mystics, they're like, rule number 1, don't teach the child anything. Rule number 2, see rule number 1, right? Why? Because as a baby, we discussed before, they can express their emotions with no judgment. They're okay to cry and laugh and shit themselves. They don't care, whatever. But then the parents are like, no, you shouldn't be crying. Stop crying so much. You're making a noise. And then all of a sudden, their true nature gets suppressed. So we need to go back into the unlearning all these limitations and beliefs that we've adopted from the education system, which is bullshit and needs a proper revamp. from these books that we read that most of the time people write books about stuff that never worked for them in their life anyway. The amount of authors I know that write books on what you should do, and yet they don't embody it in their soul is crazy. Even the coaching world, that's why I don't like being called a coach, because it's the same story. I coach a lot of coaches, and they realize quickly how out of alignment they are when they teach something, but they don't embody it themselves. So I want to make sure that the information that I get and the information that I learn is coming from a source of someone that I really want to be like, and not what they show, but I want to know everything in the times that they aren't online, what's going on. When they're not writing, what do they do? Do they live a proper, joyful life? And I've realized there's not many out there that do. And so I will only read or listen to or watch stuff that comes from a few certain people. And at the end of the day, I realized that we have all the answers we need inside us. It's not about knowing more, because knowing more, we get sucked into this vortex of reading more, knowing more, listening more. There's so much information out there. But I ask myself, what are we distracting ourselves from? What am I distracting myself from? And it's scary to see yourself and face the demons.
Correct. The real work, the inner work. That's really true. And
I want, go on.
Go. Sorry.
I just want to know where the information is coming from, because it's a way of life. You don't show up a certain way sometimes and a certain way other times. A sage is kind to those who are unkind to him, and a sage is kind to those who are kind to him, because kindness is all he knows. So I want to see what's running in the background for everyone. If I read a book, I want to know that it's going to benefit me, because also our time is limited. We can't read 1,000, 2,000 books. So if we're going to read one book a year, you better make sure it's a good book.
Because I just listened to the Hugh Jackman and Tim Ferriss show podcast, and because Hugh and his wife, they read every morning, and his mentality, what they do is that they read together, because they realize that they won't be able to read all the books that they want to read. So they actually read out loud, like 2 different books, like they share the time, but so that they're absorbing 2 books at the one time, sort of thing. And they've done that for the last 30 or so years. And that was why I kind of wanted to ask the question about how important it is to read and to keep growing and to keep knowing and to keep learning.
I think it is important. Like, growth is, our innate yearning is to grow. We don't like being stuck in any way, shape or form. And so growth is amazing. But for me, why are you reading is the question. Are you reading to upskill and to learn something, or are you distracting yourself from what's really going on? And for the majority of the people, they don't know why they're reading. They haven't asked themselves these questions. So ask yourself the question, why do I want to learn so much all the time? I have friends that are in and out of every single seminar you can ever think of. They read every single book, but deep down, they're just masking what's going on. And that's what I was doing. I fell into the self-development industry because I didn't want to feel a certain way. So I attended every single seminar I could go to. I read all the books. I had all the mentors. And until I got to the point where I was like, yes, there are some skills and insights and perspectives that are attached to reading and growing. But at the same time, why am I doing it? And I was doing it to run away from who I really was. And that was an amazing moment for me, because I realized that I don't need to learn anymore. I need to unlearn everything I think I know to get back to the I don't know. And that's probably been one of the powerful things for me.
I love that. And that's, again, you said you question everything now. You just kind of question where the source comes from, or question why you're doing it. Intention's really important, knowing what the intent is behind the actions that you do. So are you now...
Questioning is one of the most powerful. Think about it. As a child, they question everything. They have the deepest curiosity ever, but then that curiosity is sedated. And all of a sudden we feel pain, and we attach onto ideas and beliefs and books and people because we don't want to feel pain again. We protect ourselves through these things. So having a deep curiosity to everything, question everything. I was coaching someone the other day, and it was like, my purpose is this. I was like, well, how do you know what a purpose is? Like, where does that come from? Because were you born with a manual to say that every human's purpose is to find out what you do well in life? What is your skill set? Where do you love spending your time? And that's your purpose? Where did that belief come from? Whose is that? What if your purpose was just to be? was just to show up, dissolve all these emotional triggers and resistance inside of yourself and light this fire and this flame so bright inside you that no one can extinguish it. What if that was your purpose? Everyone makes goals to achieve these materialistic things. I want the car, $10,000 a month. I want the successful podcast. I want to look a certain way. I want the relationship. Have you ever seen someone with a goal of having absolute equanimity, poise and balance internally, to make themselves so strong inside that nothing outside can affect them? Everything's one-sided. People have gratitude lists all the time. So people come to me, oh no, I have a gratitude list. I write 3 to 5 gratitudes every night. I'm like, all right, tell me what you're grateful for. I'm grateful for the sun, for my amazing family, for this and that. I'm like, what about all the bad shit that you're not grateful for? Because that's true gratitude. Anyone can be grateful for the sun. But are you grateful for turning 30? Are you grateful for the relationship that just didn't work out? Are you grateful for the terrible, terrible childhood that you think you had? Because if you're not truly grateful.
Damn, that is real. That is some real talk right there. 100%. I think we are, when we do practice gratitude, we're always looking at those positive external sort of factors as well. Grateful for the sun, grateful for the earth or the beach, or and even when we do internal gratitude, it's like, I'm grateful for my family, or 100%. I've never looked at it that way in terms of being grateful for the quote unquote negative parts of our lives.
And gratitude is one of those blanket statements and words that get thrown around left, right, and center. It's like, I just want to question everything. And not from a place of being right, but just from seeing things in a different perspective, in a different light, because all of a sudden it has a different meaning. Because if you're only grateful for the positive things, then are you basically, the subtext is telling yourself, well, the bad things aren't good. They're not supposed to happen. Whereas I can have a tear of gratitude running down my face for the time I stood up in front of 12 people and froze. How powerful is that compared to, I'm grateful for my friends who are always nice to me?
That's easy.
And it's easy.
Yeah.
And when you can go about your life and question everything that you know, you realize that we don't know a damn thing. So people that are trying to create a solution for an illusory problem to sell you a course or a program is madness, because no one knows. We don't even know an atom of a leaf in its entirety. And yet people are telling you what happens in afterlife and before life and this and purpose and all this crazy stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just gotta say, the magic of life and the universe is in these 3 powerful words. I don't know. It's the uncertainty. How beautiful is that? Krishnamurti, this Indian philosopher, once said, you know what my secret is? I don't mind what happens. That's it. When you can live in a place of I don't know and I don't mind what happens, your life is magical, because no matter what uncertain events happen, if you hit 30, if someone breaks up with you, if you have a car crash, if you stand up in front of someone and freeze, it doesn't matter, because it's such a beautiful blessing and life is unfolding in the way that's exactly supposed to happen.
You're freaking a gem. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that I found you. For those that are looking for a potential mentor or a coach, because it is so hard to kind of decide where to find one, are you now taking on clients? Are you available for that space and to hold people on that one-on-one space? Because yeah, it's like I look at my life and I'm like, oh, how about if I don't have people that are where I want to be? Like there's a gap there. I haven't got access to them yet. So can they reach out to you? How can
reach out to me, Dean Blankfield on Instagram. I love helping and supporting in general. So one of my things is, even if I can't support you, I will be able to point you in the direction of someone that can, or something. Maybe it's a book, maybe it's a course, maybe it's another mentor. I have an amazing tool belt of people around me at all times that specialize in all different areas. And it's like the plumber metaphor, right? If a plumber comes into your house and you have a leaking sink and he's only got a hammer, he's not going to be able to fix the sink. So that's why I love surrounding myself with amazing people in their own right and in their own field. So I love helping people. I coach people one-on-one. I've got an online course coming out eventually. And yeah, reach out and I will be able to help you. And if not, I'll point you in the direction of someone that can, for sure.
I love that. It almost defeats the purpose of this last question, but I'll ask it anyway, because I think you've already displayed it in your being. But this podcast is called The Authentic Me. So what does authenticity mean to you?
Why is it not called authentic you?
Wait, are you trying to make my last name? Is that a pun there?
Pretty cool. Yeah, that would have been pretty cool. That would have been authentic to you, right? Anyway, what does authenticity mean? It means unraveling everything that you think you are, every expectation that has been put on you, everything that you think you're supposed to be, and show up in your true essence. And that takes a lot of work. Show up in a way that you don't mind what other people think of you. That's being authentic.
Dean, you're amazing. You're an absolute legend. It has been an honor and a privilege to be able to have this time with you. I am very grateful for you. I'll probably even put this video up on YouTube because it was that good, and I want people to kind of see my reactions the whole time, my face. I feel like I've just had my wedding day or something. Not that I've been married, but like it's just all smiles from here. So thank you so much. So guys, it's Dean Blankfield on Instagram. He's very accessible. Reach out, and I'll put everything down in the show notes. But until then, thank you so much, Dean, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much, Mel. Thanks for having me. I'm truly grateful and love everything you're doing. So I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on The Authentic Me. If you found value in this episode, please smash that like button and share with someone who may also benefit from our content. Never miss an episode by subscribing to this podcast, available on all audio streaming platforms. And make sure to let me know what you want to hear more of on this journey to your truest, highest, authentic self. See you next time. Bye.